burned. And what happens? They convert that into a score, and then on the ensuing drive that the Jets had, Brandon Marshall commits a turnover, it gets returned for a touchdown, and then after that, Marshall drops a crucial third down pass, which should have been a catch. We thought for sure this was going to affect him the rest of the game, but lo and behold, Marshall was able to overcome his fumble and his dropped pass.
And the leg that he had.
And this really gruesome knee injury that he wound up suffering. I thought for sure that he blew out his knee.
I know. In fact, I was listening to Ray Lucas on Jets postgame on SNY. He said my heart was like out of my chest and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I could understand that. I think every Jet fan was probably gasping for air, like, oh my God, this could be the actual end of the season right here, because he's one of the crucial wideouts along with Decker, and you know what, Jalen Marshall and Quincy Enunwa. Quincy Enunwa was the hero, was the X factor in this game. You've got a really potentially dangerous trio with Decker, who also had a terrific game last night. Got one of the only touchdown catch from Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm. And also Brandon Marshall, who overcame his mistakes to have a really good game, and now Enunwa. This is a really dangerous, potentially dangerous offense that the Jets can have. Fitzpatrick, which is really saying a lot considering I'm no fan of his. Forte, and also, you notice the Jets decided to go with a 4 wide receiver set. This is the equivalent of the old run-and-shoot offense that the former Houston Oilers and then the Detroit Lions used to run back in the late 80s and early 90s. This could possibly save the Jets' season, opening the game up the way they did in last night's game.
7 of their drives across midfield. For the Bills, it took them till the second half to finally get beyond the 50-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of all that, they were 7 yards shy of 500 yards of total offense, 28 first downs. This was a complete turnaround from the mistakes they made against the Bengals.
Yep.
So now they're 1-1 to start the year. They play Kansas City in less than 10 days.
As big as a win as it was for the Jets last night, it doesn't mean that they should overlook their mistakes. The big mistakes that they're making right now are in the secondary.
Yep.
Those 2 touchdowns that Tyrod Taylor threw last night, those were the 2 plays that burned the Jets really, really badly.
The 84-yarder.
Yep. It got so bad, J.R. Smith of the Cavaliers was mocking Darrelle Revis on Twitter last night. And, of course, Darrelle Revis...
He's the last person
the last person to try and talk about getting burned, especially considering that J.R. Smith has been burning himself with one mistake after another. Now, we mentioned the Giants a little bit. That was probably the single most important win that the Giants have had to start a season in forever, especially when you consider that the Cowboys won 5 straight opening day games that were played against the Giants.
But you got to give it up to Dak Prescott. The fact that he had to come in as the starter in a huge game and yet had so much poise, so much maturity than I've seen in any other rookie that ever had to play for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Ezekiel Elliott, too.
Mm-hmm.
2 young rookies that has not started. They never had that as a starting rookie set of running backs and quarterbacks since 1969. When you think about, Roger Staubach.
But consider this, though. As well as Dak Prescott played, I didn't see the Giants put any pressure on him whatsoever in that first half, but the second half was a totally different story. They didn't get any sacks against him, but they put enough of a push against him to scramble and do things that he was not comfortable doing. And can we say a welcome back to Victor Cruz? How about, the game that he had? I mean, the numbers didn't show that much, but he was such a factor in that game last night. And what about that rookie, Sterling Shepard? Him, Odell Beckham Jr., and Victor Cruz, they are going to be deadly against other secondaries this coming season. Eli Manning is going to have a lot of fun working with that trio.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think, things are going to improve in the backfield, too. The offensive line will get better as the season progresses, but the defense really...
The defense was a key. I mean, 20 points is...
19 points they gave up, yeah.
19 points in this game. Overall, it was a really good job that the Giant defense did. It wasn't anything spectacular like some members of the media think they saw, but the Giants did just enough to try and get this victory, and they did it. Now they're going up against the Saints defense, which is deadly offensively, but a cruel joke defensively. Look what happened to the Saints against the Raiders this past weekend.
This is why this week Eli Manning will take advantage of this. But I think, if you think of last year's game in the Dome, it was a 52-49 victory for the Saints. 13 combined total touchdowns, 7 for Brees, 6 for Manning, which for Manning, that was a career high for him last year. This is, some people will say this is going to be a bombs away type of game. There's going to be an aerial explosion with these two quarterbacks. But I'll be honest, most of the aerial attacking will be on Eli Manning's part. I'm going with the Giants to win this opening game at MetLife Stadium or Giant Life Stadium for this Sunday. I'm going with Big Blue. They got this. Let's go into the matchup of the AFC North.
AFC North is Bengals and Steelers. Steelers coming off a blowout win, and the Bengals just escaping with their lives. It took a field goal with less than a minute to go to actually win that game in those notorious wins that MetLife Stadium now has, that Giant Stadium was famous for all those years ago. But it's not going to be any cakewalk for the Bengals in this game either, because they're going up against a Steeler team that's really bounced back and made a lot of improvements this year.
Steelers have had their number in the last 2 games, including that wild card game that knocked the Bengals out of the playoffs for the 5th straight year in the wild card weekend. And that was due to Vontaze Burfict.
Yeah.
Penalty. In fact, he's still serving the second game of his 3-game suspension, so he won't be there for that defensive line. But you still got to deal with DeMonte Pico, Geno Atkins, Carl Dunlap. They're going to be... The matchup to look at is the offensive line for the Steelers against those 3 defensive linemen that I mentioned. That will be crucial for the Steelers to win this game. If this offensive line can hold those 3 in check and Brown gets enough of the push down the field, and you got Eli Rogers, Sammy Coates to get all them running, I think the Steelers got this game, and they're at home too.
Yeah.
Heinz Field is going to be a rockin' this week. I'm going with the Steelers to get this matchup going, and DeAngelo Williams, I think, could run roughshod over that run defense. Now, Packers, Vikings, the opening regular season game at U.S. Bank Stadium, which will be the home of the 2018 Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's going to be a really it's a fun time to be a sports fan in Minneapolis, because the Vikings are going to christen their new stadium officially
Sunday night football
for the regular season. And needless to say, there's no better way to do that than against the hated Packers. But you look at the quarterback matchup for these two teams. You have Aaron Rodgers, but then again, who do the Vikings have?
We don't even know still. We don't know whether it's going to be Sean Hill or Sam Bradford. It's going to be a guessing game up until the last hour. So that's why Mike McCarthy is going to game plan for either quarterback.
Yeah.
If it's going to be Sam Bradford,
if it's going to be Sam Bradford, then expect a lot of mistakes to be made in this one.
Well, both players can make mistakes. Hill had one of the worst passer ratings week 1 against Tennessee. The fact that Minnesota won wasn't because of him. That was the defense who got those 2 mistakes off of Mariota in the second half.
Yeah.
So if the Vikings are going to win, it's not going to be their quarterbacks. It's going to be their defense. And the defense will have to do what they did last week against Mariota. They're going to have to keep Aaron Rodgers in the pocket, which is not easy to do. Because if you don't contain Rodgers in the pocket, you allow him to escape, move his feet, he's going to make you pay big time.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think Rodgers is going to get out of the pocket. He's going to make them pay big time at the Minnesota Vikings' new home opener. And do you know they have the best winning percentage in dome stadiums in NFL history? 6-15 winning percentage.
Absolutely amazing.
But it doesn't matter. In this game, they're going against Aaron Rodgers, and he's not going to care what percentage they have in domes, because he's got Devontae Adams to throw to. Eddie Lacy, I think, is going to have a big game. And that Packers defense is going to load 8 people in the box to prevent Adrian Peterson from doing anything. That's what Tennessee did last week.
Yeah.
You know how many yards AP was reduced to? 31 yards and 19 carries. Thanks for screwing me fantasy-wise, AP.
Yeah.
Now going to the next game, you got Indianapolis Colts, Denver Broncos. Denver coming off that season-opening victory at home against the Panthers, 21-20.
And that's because they dodged a major bullet when the place kicker missed a field goal, enabling the Broncos to remain 1-0. So when you think about it, they should be 0-1 right now. But You thought that a rematch with the Panthers was big. Well, it's not going to be anything compared to a meeting with Andrew Luck, a guy who has already established himself to be a very good quarterback in this league. And in spite of the fact that he was snake bitten this past weekend by the Lions, something tells me that things are going to change a little bit. Although I would really look out for that Bronco defense, because if the Broncos are going to try and defend their title this year, it's going to be with the defense. It's not going to be with the kid quarterback trying to lead them. Not that he should or try and do anything or try to do too much, but this Bronco defense is really going to have to pick up the slack for the majority of the season.
Let's hope Demaryius Thomas will be able to play. He's been limited in practice with him injuries, and that would hurt Sammy offensively, not having him as one of his main weapons to go to. Also, look out for that defensive line for the Broncos. They are going to attack Andrew Luck. They're the same team who knocked him out of the regular season last year in their matchup in 2015. So, but the Broncos are not going to do what they did last week against Camden. They can't do any more of those head-to-head injury, helmet-to-helmet hits like they did. Two of their players actually got fined by the NFL for doing that. The NFL should have done something at the very beginning, but nonetheless, in this particular game here, the Broncos are going to be winning this game due to the fact that you got DeMarcus Ware. He's going to have a big performance. Expect 2 sacks out of him coming out of that defensive line. Now, Cowboys, Redskins. Honestly, this game right here is going to be Ezekiel Elliott central. He's going up against a run defense that gave up 146 yards to DeAngelo Williams, the oldest ever to do that in NFL history. I shudder to think against a 22-year-old coming out of Ohio State, what he's going to do to them.
Yeah, this is a game for the Cowboys to try and right themselves against their single most hated rival, and the Redskins are really just falling backwards right now, especially with the lack of offensive creativity that they had in the Steelers game.
How about the stupidity on defense against Pittsburgh, where you didn't have Josh Norman follow Antonio Brown? Why would you have Rashad Breeland defending him when Josh Norman should have been following him the entire game? If that were the case, Brown wouldn't have had 126 yards. But, of course, Jay Gruden, dumb mistake on your part for doing that. Hopefully you learn from your mistake, and you'll have Norman follow whoever the top receiver is. And this week, that's Des Bryant.
Yeah.
So you know those two are going to be going up against each other. And you know Norman's going to try and get in Bryant's face. Expect a lot of jawing back and forth in this matchup. But at the end of the day, Elliott is going to have the big performance of the night, of the day. I'm going with the Cowboys to go roughshod over that Redskin team. Now, the Chiefs, Texans, right here. This is a rematch of last year's wild card round in which the Chiefs had 5 takeaways off of Brian Hoyer. Not going to be the case this time for the Texans. Brock Osweiler has a litany of good weapons on offense, including Will Fuller.
Yeah.
Expect Will Fuller. This is going to be his game. He's going to have another 100-yard performance again to start off this game. Lamar Miller is going to run roughshod over that Chiefs defense.
There's also the matter of J.J. Watt, probably the single best defensive player in the entire league right now. I shudder to think who the guy is that's going to be trying guarding him, because Watt brings so much athletic ability in addition to so much pursuit of opposing quarterbacks.
At the end of the day, I'm going with the Texans to win this. This is all Texans all the time. This is going to definitely be this time around. I think the turnovers and the mistakes will be on the Chiefs' side, especially Alex Smith. I expect a few picks that will be picked off from, say, Jonathan Joseph in their secondary. Now, let's go to Buccaneers-Cardinals. This is going to be something of a matchup. These two teams had games of score or less in Week 1. They lost, of course, to the Patriots, 23-21. They defeated the Falcons, 31-24. Jameis Winston had a great coming-out party with 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. This time around, though, they're going against a Cardinals team in the desert. This defense, Chandler Jones, that whoever has to try and defend him on the offensive line, that's going to be the matchup to look at. If the Cardinals, if the Buccaneers do a good job of preventing Jones from getting a sack or any sort of impact, then you know what? The Bucs will win this game. But I'll be honest, it's also the X factor is going to be Charles Sims, the running back for that Buccaneers squad.
It's time for Chandler Jones to try and make an impact, though. He was rather quiet against his former team. This could be the time for him to make an impact because he's still going up against a really young Tampa Bay offensive front. Maybe this could be the point for him to try and expose some weaknesses there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, my pick is going to be Arizona. I think David Johnson is going to run all over that Buccaneers defense. He's going to make some big plays out of the backfield. Expect David Johnson to have a performance of a lifetime. Now, 49ers, Panthers, home opener at Bank of America Stadium. Granted, 49ers won week 1, but they played the Rams. This is a Panther team coming off a huge, devastating loss week 1 on the road. They're going to be home where they've won 12 straight games, including both games in the NFC playoff picture. This time around, to me, this is going to be Panthers. And the reason why, Cam Newton will be playing.
Yeah.
If it wasn't him playing, I would have easily won 49ers in this game, even despite having Gabbert as their starting quarterback. But the fact that Newton's playing this week, he's at 100%, from all the hits
I hope he
took.
would be at 100% because he took some shots in that game.
3 hits to the head.
3 shots to the head in this game. Something needs to be done about these constant helmet-to-helmet hits. I mean, call more penalties on them, or better yet, why not try and levy a suspension against a particular player for a helmet-to-helmet hit? Maybe this will be a wake-up call for some of these guys, because if the league is trying to really crack down on concussions, they need to do something.
Well, they have the rule. If you have 2 penalties, 2 personal fouls, you're kicked out of the game.
See, that's a slap on the wrist in my eyes, and that's mostly along the lines of unsportsmanlike conduct. If anything, 1 helmet-to-helmet hit should be enough for an automatic suspension for the next game.
Well,
in addition to being kicked out of the active game that's taking place.
I'm going with the Panthers to win that game against the 49ers defense. Yeah, they gave up nothing against Rams, but again, we're talking about the Rams here. Panthers are a different animal this time around. And they're running Greg Olsen's going to have a field day against that 49ers secondary. Now, quickly, Dolphins, Patriots, AFC East action right here. Dolphins having to go to the Pacific Northwest, going back to Miami, now have to travel up the East Coast to play New England their opener. New England has won 7 straight over Miami. And on top of that, Tannehill's career record against the Patriots since he started, 5 touchdowns, 22 interceptions.
I think the numbers speak for itself, but that's number 1. Number 2, I now see where this Patriots game plan lies. It lies on
actually
their
22 times he was sacked, 7 interceptions. My bad.
I now see where the Patriot game plan lies now. It lies on their defense because we saw them do just enough to try and limit a really dangerous Arizona offensive attack. But against a Dolphin team with a colossal disappointment at quarterback, this short of a bust, what can the Patriots possibly do to try and win this game? Pressure Ryan Tannehill, because I don't see enough of a running game to try and take some of the pressure off of him.
I'm going with the Patriots with extreme caution, though. I wouldn't overlook this Dolphins team. They are still my sleeper team to get a wild card spot. The matchup to look for is Mario Williams, Cameron Wake, and Ndamukong Suh, that defensive line, against that Patriots O-line, and trying to protect Jimmy Garoppolo. He is the quarterback for the next 2 games after this, up until October 9th, when the Patriots play the Browns, and that's when Brady will make his season debut. But until then, the O-line has to do a good job protecting Tannehill from that. Let's not forget last week, when the Dolphins were in Miami, 3rd quarter, Wilson has ankle rolled by Ndamukong Suh. That's the last thing you want Jimmy Garoppolo to have to go through. So that Patriots O-line has to do a good job. I think they'll just do good enough and get enough big plays going, especially with LeGarrette Blount, to win this game. So I'm going with the Patriots with extreme caution. Don't be shocked if the Dolphins possibly win this game. Now, the Falcons, Raiders, right here. I'm going with the Raiders. This is an easy pick for me. Falcons, had a lead in the beginning of their game against the Bucs, and they blew it. They have 0 pass rush, but so do the Raiders. both teams will come down to their pass rush.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a coming out party for Khalil Mack from Buffalo. I'm going with the Raiders to win this game. The black and silver dominate in their head opener, and I can't wait to see the guy with the monkey face mask and the spikes coming out. They have some crazy fans.
Funny that you mentioned the Raiders, because here's a side note on them. They just approved funding. I think it's about $750 million to get a stadium built in Las Vegas.
Should be fun. It should be awesome. Can't wait to see what they do in the desert.
I'm still trying to come to grips with pronouncing the words Las Vegas Raiders. It just does not sound good at all.
And just with a few games to go, this is our quick hits right here. Carson Wentz is going to hit Cleveland very badly with
Cleveland or Chicago?
Actually, Chicago with a 3-touchdown performance. 2 to Jordan Matthews, I expect. 1 to Nelson Aguilar. On Monday Night Football. This is not a Monday night matchup, but you know what? For the people in North Dakota, they're going to be happy to tune in to see their own favorite son, Carson Wentz, square off and take down Cutler and the Bears. And I'll tell you, Cutler got sacked 5 times last week. That offensive line needs a lot of retooling. Even with Josh sitting there, it doesn't matter.
It's a good thing that the Eagles have a really soft first couple of weeks in their schedule. Try and give Wentz a little bit of confidence to build with going into some first division games and second, much tougher opponents.
How about what's old is new again? The opening game for the LA Rams. I know it says St. Louis on my flag, but this is the LA Rams at the Memorial Coliseum in LA, the home of the USC Trojans. Be taking on the Seattle Seahawks in an NFC West showdown. The Seahawks were swept last year by the Rams. This time around, I wouldn't overlook this matchup either. The Rams were embarrassed on Monday night. They laid a goose egg, 28-0. They can ill afford to have that similar type of game against the Seahawks, who only had a 12-10 victory against Miami.
And the reason why the Rams swept the Seahawks last year was because the Rams played better defense than the Seahawks. The Rams are very solid defensively. Didn't show it against the 49ers, but they have enough of a pass rush to try and disrupt Russell Wilson.
And I think that's going to be the reason why I'm going with the Rams. It's my upset pick this week. I'm going with the Rams to win in LA. First game out of the gate there. And let me tell you, Russell Wilson, who knows if he's 100% because of what happened against Miami in the third quarter. Now, let's go to the Titans against the Lions. The Titans were embarrassed because of Marcus Mariota and his 2 colossal mistakes in the third quarter, as I kept mentioning so many times. If he does that against Detroit, they will take advantage of it.
Yeah. And
I'll tell you, it's going to happen again. He's going to make some mistakes. DeMarco Murray will be maybe the one thing that will keep them from losing this game, but at the end, I don't think it will still be enough. I'm going with that backfield of Abdullah and Theo Riddick to help the Lions overcome.
I'm surprised that the Lions or the Titans don't use that two-headed running back enough to try and take more pressure off of Mariota.
I know. You got Derrick Henry, a reigning Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama, and DeMarco Murray. That's what they need to do to win, not relying on Mariota, but maybe a few occasional passes he'll throw on play action fakes. But at the end of the day, I'm going with Stafford to win. Jaguars, Chargers, going with the Chargers. No, I'm kidding, actually. I'm going with the Jags. That's my upset pick, folks. Jaguars, not the same cookie-cutter team, not the same team that you can just beat by double-digit points. You got you got the A-team on offense, Allen Hurns, Allen Robinson. You got a two-headed monster as well in Chris Ivory, who will be playing along with TJ Yeldon. You got Julius Thomas, one of the most underrated tight ends in the game right there. Blake Bortles is going to have a season for the ages. This Titans offense, along with that newly constructed defense, is going to be able to take on the Chargers, sans Keenan Allen.
Yeah. And what of Chris Ivory, a guy who suffered a really bad concussion in his Jaguars debut? Is he going to be showing up for this game, or is he going to be benched?
I think he's going to be showing up. I think he'll be a game time, but at the end of the day, I think he will be playing. I think he'll pass the battery of tests.
Plus, the Jaguars play better defense than the Chargers do. They have a few more athletes, especially on the line.
And the Chargers will be without Joey Bosa for the second straight week. The guy who basically held out for so many days. Now, Ravens, Browns, the last matchup I'm going to discuss because, honestly, this is the worst matchup of the entire week.
Yeah.
This has got Ravens written all over it. If you look at Flacco's career, he's 13-2 all time against the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough right there, along with Mike Wallace, who's really emerging as the weapon he was once in Pittsburgh. I shudder to think what he's going to do against that Browns secondary. Even though
he has the potential to have a field day against that Browns secondary, because the Browns just have no playmakers defensively.
Now let's go to the top 5 games of college football week 3. You got USC Stanford. This could be a preview of the Pac-12 championship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with the Stanford Cardinal. Christian McCaffrey is just going to have another Heisman Trophy season. Michigan State, Notre Dame in South Bend.
And on prime time.
Yep, 7:30 NBC. Look out, Deshaun Kaiser. Talk about another Heisman Trophy candidate right there. Mm-hmm. He's been spectacular the first 2 games.
The one game that I'm interested in seeing is Florida State-Louisville. Louisville has already come up with 2 big wins to start the season. Of course, they were non-conference, but this is their first real big test against the Florida State team that's got their sights set on another national championship, not just an ACC championship. And the game is going to be at Louisville, and they're also going to honor Muhammad Ali before the game with a really touching tribute and ceremony for him. So this is going to be a big game for the Cardinal.
Yeah, Papa John's Stadium, which is the name of this, is going to be rocking for sure. You got the battle of the true freshman quarterbacks. DeAndre Francois, who can run and catch as well, a dual-threat passer against Lamar Jackson, who last week had a record 610 yards against Syracuse in that 62-28 victory. So this is going to be a lot of points on the board. Then you got a classic SEC West showdown. The Alabama Crimson Tide against their nemesis, the Ole Miss Rebels, the team that has beaten Alabama the last 2 years.
Yep. And Ole Miss has never won 3 in a row against Alabama, so this could be their big test. Although in this case, Alabama just has way too much quickness and way too much athletic ability for the Ole Miss Rebels.
And I like Allen Hurns. I like their rookie quarterback they got going against Chad Kelly. This is going to be defense will really play out in this game for sure. And then the biggest game of the entire week, the Buckeyes of Ohio State going to Norman to take on the Oklahoma Sooners.
The single best game of the entire weekend. 2 schools with national championship capabilities. You have an Ohio State offense which can score punches in so many ways. They can throw, they can pound it. They're very, very underrated defensively, going up against an Oklahoma team that could very well try and chuck guys to death with their running game.
And they're just reeling from that Week 1 loss to Houston.
Speaking of Houston, we would have thought that the Houston victory over Oklahoma would have been a letdown for the Cougars. Well, they had their American Athletic Conference opener against Cincinnati just 2 nights ago.
And they destroyed them.
Destroyed the Bearcats thanks to 2 big Bearcat turnovers that resulted in touchdowns.
Greg Ward Jr., he's going to be a sleeper candidate for Heisman Trophy, the Heisman Trophy this year, along with, I would say, Christian McCaffrey, Deshaun Kaiser. But Clemson this week has got to do better. The last 2 weeks, they've had performances where it's been less than a score, where they've won. Granted, against Troy
University, which almost came away with a victory against them.
And because of that, they went from being number 2 to number 5.
Yeah.
My boys this week, they got the North Texas Mean Green. They're back in the top 25 this week at 23. I'm very happy. Miami in the Mark Richt era is 2-0. Who's really doing something sensational with that program. And with Brad Kaya.
Let's see what they do against conference competition, because they played Florida Atlantic and Florida A&M. That is nothing to try and brag about.
That's for sure. There's going to be a lot of exciting games.
I want to see what they could do against Florida State, which is the big game for that campus.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm looking for, and Oklahoma State coming off that really embarrassing loss to Chippewa. The Central Michigan.
Central Michigan, yeah.
Yeah, that should have never happened.
That should have never happened because, for one, there was just terrible clock management, especially on the part of the referees.
I know. It was a lateral, and it
was a lateral that off a Hail Mary pass, which turned into a touchdown. Quite frankly, Oklahoma State was stolen.
Oh, that game, they could have been 2-0 and said, now, with less than 10 seconds, I can't wait to the Giants game. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And by the way, next Saturday, I'm going to be in a play called Oliver. Anyway, I'll talk more about that on Monday's show. Good night, Staten Island. Peace, love. Love you all. Yeah, next Saturday.